Hello and welcome to Insight, a show where we have courageous conversations about social justice and the issues affecting the citizens of the region of Peel and beyond. I'm one of your hosts, David Barnwell, and you'll recall when you were getting off the highway today at the end of the day on your long commute home, there was an individual standing at the corner with a sign. They needed some money, they were down on their luck, and they don't have a home to go back to. I guarantee you most of us probably turn the other way and continue our drive home without giving it any more thought. We just assume that the stereotype of drug addiction or laziness must be the reason that they can't get themselves a home or some kind of shelter. But you'll be very surprised at many of the reasons why individuals find themselves homeless. That's what we're talking about today, is breaking the cycle of homelessness and going from homelessness to home. We're joined by three of our Insight hosts, Ranjit, Dave, and Anchal, and a special guest, Peter Gillespie, to tell us about the Full Circle Recovery Program. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome to Insight, a show on social justice issues, and today's show is on homeless to housing. And we're bringing in some amazing guests today who are going to share their stories and their experiences. And today we have Peter Gillespie. Welcome, and thank you for being on our show today. Now, you do a lot of work with homeless people, and you have a whole ton of experience in terms of reaching out to homeless people. And could you share some of those experiences with us today, please, Peter?
Sure. What I've done is I go to people definitely homeless, but in group, I've mainly concentrated on addiction, drug addiction. And what you find is the numbers that are totally homeless, but they're staying together in so-called crack houses. Okay, they're totally off the record. They have, a lot of people are on welfare, and they can't afford to live.
And would you say that there's a larger number of undetected homeless in our community?
Oh, there's no question, no question. The number of people that I deal with on a weekly basis, it's astronomical, the numbers.
Can you explain what that hidden homeless is for our audience so they understand?
There's a lot of people in hotels. Okay. But they're your prostitutes, and they're not on welfare, so they're totally undetected. Okay, the police know about them, but that's it. You have up to maybe 20 to 25 people staying in one house, which would be your crack house, which the police there again will monitor, and when it gets too busy, they break it up and they go elsewhere. But by the end of the month, their check has already been spent on drugs. So they can't put a roof over their heads. It's physically impossible for them to do. They can't do it. But nobody looks at why they're on drugs. You just expect people to get off drugs, and this problem will be solved. Well, that's only the beginning of the problem, because society literally has dropped the ball here. Okay, they have not done things correctly. You understand a little?
Can I actually ask about that misconception? I know a lot of people say that the homeless are people that can help themselves and that are in a position to just go out and get a job.
Oh, they can't.
Like everyone else.
They can't. I would say maybe 1 in 25 might be able to do that for a short period of time without a lot of help from a lot of people. Okay?
So we're looking at unemployment, we're looking at drug addiction, we're looking at violence or domestic violence that's led them there.
Mental illness.
We're looking at mental health issues now. And so there's, not now, because they've always been there, it's just that we're talking about them now, right? And so there are a whole gamut of different issues that are impacting people that are homeless. And to be able to think, or to be naive enough to think that just by putting them in a house is going to resolve the issue, isn't
It's
the
not even gonna
reality.
touch-
It's not going to
gonna
happen.
touch the problem.
Right.
The whole problem is that nobody has actually addressed why they're there.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what we're trying to do here. This is why I went to the street, to figure out why people are doing what they're doing. And it's mostly mental health issues. A breakup of the home. Now, here's another good point, is that when our economy took off and all of a sudden you needed 2 people working to maintain your household, what happens to that child? Okay, or children in the family?
There's displacement.
No, well, yes.
Yeah.
You have, all of a sudden, this child is now in daycare. Now you have a pseudo-parent for the day. Okay, usually the father would come home first, so he'd pick up the child. The mother, usually working retail, would come home later. Now she's exhausted, she hasn't eaten, she wants food. Where's the time for the child here?
And a lot
Okay,
of the
go
kids,
play, so I eat.
and
Or
a lot
watch
of the
TV.
kids
Understand?
would
Or
be
watch TV, or get on your Game Boy or whatever.
right, and a lot of the kids would be latch kids, you know, that would,
with the key around.
yeah,
Yep.
literally, they would go to school with their keys, and they would have to come back and let themselves in.
Yeah.
As they got
And,
older, yes.
You know, and certainly those are the kids that have missed out.
That's right.
Right.
So
now
you don't
with
lose, you lose the learning tools, what you're supposed to be learning in the family, till maybe the age of 15, 18, 20 years old before you leave home, are now left on their own as almost babies. So where do they learn?
But
That's
then,
where society's gone wrong.
but look at the increase in single families or single parents actually bringing up kids. They don't have a choice. So it's not like, you know, you've got families with 2 parents, and so if they're not, you know, they can share the load. Where the burden falls on just one parent all the time, it's a challenge of the times.
It is.
Right?
It is a challenge.
And
but where we should all step up to help these families.
right.
As,
There's no
as a
programs
community.
Yeah.
for that other than a daycare
And that's where we
or
really
after school activities.
Yeah.
You know.
And
But
you
where
see,
do get the love?
that's where it's interesting, because there's a project called Housing First in Medicine Hat. So Medicine Hat talks to the importance of making sure that we actually take the homeless off the street, but to provide them with other, you know, resources and facilities. And according to Medicine Hat in Alberta, the mayor had suggested that it costs us 5 times as much to keep a homeless person on the street. And the reason being that they're in emergency, there's a whole ton of resources being put into them actually on the street. But if we could house them first and then provide all of the provisions that are
Yes.
still necessary, then the chances are we'll keep them off the street.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So is that what you're sort of suggesting as well, is the importance of that whole full circle
It's a-
recovery?
Yes.
Because you're involved in that too, and I know we're going to talk in depth
Yes.
about it a bit later.
Yes.
But tell me a little bit more about your experience. I know you've done great work actually reaching out to the homeless. You'll go and meet them where they are, spend the day with them, spend time with them, get to understand them. So what were the challenges of actually trying to support some of the homeless people?
Well, their soul, their spirit has been absolutely beaten down to nothing. So confidence level, they have none in most cases. So I spend time and I give them hope. And hope is something that people need. You need to look forward to something. You need to have something you can grasp onto to head in a direction that's positive. And right now, there's a lot of programs, but people have to go to them. I'd like to be able to supply people a place and bring the programs to them, because one of the most difficult things for especially people with addictions is to get enough strength and energy and positive feeling that, yeah, this program's going to help me.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? It's not. Because they need a ride now.
Yeah.
Because the drugs are way more important to them right now, because there's a term that nobody's really talking about that will become prevalent in the near future. It's transference, and nobody really fully understands it.
So what does that mean?
Transference, with transference, and this is what society does, this is what families do. They can't deal with something, they'll throw it onto somebody else, and they'll pick it up, because most addicts are very, very sensitive.
Right.
There's more going on in an addict than what meets the eye. So they're extremely hurt, extremely sensitive. And I've been walking down the street with a couple of people and have people drive by, roll down the window and spit at us. You could do it or you are. Just get off the drugs, you'll be fine. That doesn't work. You know, that type of person in society should feel shame. But what they're doing is transferring that shame to the person they're spitting at.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's an unconscious thing. Even though that person's conscious of what he's doing or she's doing, it's being perceived unconsciously. So now you're damaging that person even more. We're damaging the victims. And the victims are caused by society not acting correctly.
So it's victims being victimized
It
a
is.
second time, and a
It
third
is.
time, and a
And a
fourth
fourth
time.
time, and on
Because
and on
every
and on
person
and
that
on.
meets them now is throwing their guilt and their shame and their lack of
Exactly.
knowledge and understanding actually on the victim.
That's right. And
Yeah.
the same thing in a family. In a family, if they're not totally normal, okay, most families need a victim. They need a scapegoat. They transfer whatever's happened to them in the past onto the daughter or the son. Nobody realizes this. Nobody's ever studied this. This is an unknown entity that's happening right now. I'm familiar with it and I can understand it, and I do it in a very positive way. And so when I walk into a room, the whole room changes, the whole atmosphere changes, because I can do this. You know, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
So as soon as I walk in, everybody relaxes, all the tension disappears, and they're just comfortable with me. And then they can talk out whatever problems, because they can't trust anybody. They don't even trust a doctor, because they don't understand how they're feeling and what's going on. They really don't. And
So it's a form of counseling, isn't it?
Oh,
I
I'm
mean,
counseling
the fact
every day.
that when you're going out and they trust you,
yes,
and they believe that you trust them and that you want to reach out to them, and they know it's genuine, and you understand because you've lived the experience.
Yes.
You know what the experience is like. They trust you and they can reach out.
and
as-
I'm not
as
an
well.
addict.
Yeah.
That makes a huge difference. I'm a non-addict that actually cares.
Right.
And that's huge. That's absolutely huge.
And it's interesting because in all of our shows, one thing that's common that we're hearing time and time again is that those authentic voices need to be at the table for making decisions to service them.
Oh,
So
I'm
don't-
bringing people to all the meetings that I go
Yeah.
to, because they need a voice.
And I've seen
And
you do that.
I can't be the voice. I'm not an addict.
Yeah.
The addicts need to speak, and they need to be heard,
Yeah.
because they are so wise. They can tell you exactly what's wrong with society and how to fix it, but nobody will listen. They're an addict.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even sex
So what?
workers that are
Drugs aren't the
homeless.
problem.
Yeah.
Drugs are not the problem.
Yeah.
You know, just because if we legalize drugs, you know, there wouldn't be that problem.
So it's how do we
It's what
address
got
it?
them there in the
It's-
first place.
Well, no, they're covering up the pain that they're feeling. It's not drugs to get them high. No, it's just to covering pain, because they can't cope with it.
To numb it.
Yeah.
They just-
Yeah, that's just to numb it.
Their issues, their problems, whatever it is.
That's right. And of course, everybody's issues all around them, because everybody has issues, and it gets confusing. Then on top of that, if you really want to get into it, there's also spiritual awakening happening. And
Yeah.
drugs will take you there. Okay? So now they have all these new instincts that you and I don't have. Okay? That are confusing them. So to quieten that down, you need drugs. Now you're opening another whole can of worms.
And with the spiritual awakening, though,
That's right.
now
It's huge.
The materialism aspect of it, in terms of having a home and in terms of needing that space and having a job, it disappears.
Exactly.
Right? So now, of course, that's where they want to stay.
That's right.
Because they don't want to get caught up in
Society.
a job and responsibility and having to deal with the issues and so on and so forth. So
Well,
it's almost like a catch-22 situation,
it is a catch-22. There again, if you take a spiritual awakening one step further, why would they want to associate with society that's just surrounding their earth?
Yeah.
There again, that's
So-
why the drug industry is growing big time. That's
Wow.
why there's more addicts on a daily basis. And I see
Wow,
that
this
every
is-
day.
It's huge.
And it's
What-
going to be worse until we actually do something about it.
And I think that's the piece, is we need to take ownership and responsibility
We do.
for every homeless person in our city. And how we do that has to be a step forward in addressing all of the issues and not just one of them. So we can't get them off the street and assume that the issue is resolved. So your key message today, Peter, to our community, to our viewers would be what?
Oh, the key thing is don't look down on anybody. We were born all equal. We are equals. Some of us have had a really rough time, and some haven't. The ones that haven't should really take a look to see what's really happening, because it's really I would love to see a whole community like Brampton, for instance. This is where I key out of. Step in and help with a project. I know what I've come up with is a really, really good beginning to a solution. It's not the solution, but Greg will explain that a little later. But
we know it works because
it works because that's what
something's-
I do every day.
Right. And it works because we've seen it work in Medicine Hat.
Yes.
And we've seen that they've been able to service them and be able to get the homeless off the street.
That's right.
And be able to do that for them. Thank you very much for being our guest today.
You're very
and thank you for sharing your insights. So we're going to Play Matters and we'll be back in just a few moments, so stay tuned. Thank you.
Hello everyone and welcome to Play Matters. Today we will be using household materials for play. By now you have an idea of how important play is for a child's growth and development. Toys can be a very expensive and often not easily accessible thing to all families. However, the purpose of today's Play Matters segment is to teach us and teach you how to use household items for play and designing.
Here are some examples of how you can use household items as toys or to use them to make toys, such as taking an old box and putting some elastic bands on them. And I'll create over here. And creating a guitar. You could even decorate the boxes to make it more fun.
You can use whatever you need. We have some rolls here and you can use those, you can glue them together to make glasses, or you can put them together, make a little swing.
You could stack them and see balancing.
And if you don't have enough to buy Lego or blocks, you can always use boxes you find around the house to build with. So for example, we're going to build a tower using some house items we have found, some empty boxes. Whoops, that won't bounce. There we go. And this is going to help children just explore and learn and see how they can use random items around the house to make fun toys.
Other things that you can find is this is an ice cube tray, and we set it up as a shape sorter. So I'll take all the pieces out, but you could take just a regular ice cube tray, and we've, if you can see inside, we've glued some of the pieces, which are different sizes. So then the child would match up the size of the circles and the hearts in the right category. So that one's really fun.
Here we have some color sorting. So we put different colored circles on top of this. As you can see here, we have pink, yellow, and blue. We also have a purple one. And what we've just taken is put little buttons inside. And you can take the cap off and sort the buttons, and they will have to sort them by color. This can help your child learn color recognition.
Another one that's my favorite is everyone has babies, at least most people. So if you have an old Huggies baby wipe container, you just open it up and you can put some googly eyes, and it's the ABC monsters. So the child would reach in the box and they would grab an alphabet. So these are just written on bottle caps that you have at home, and this is an N. So I would say an N for Nicole, because I'm Nicole. There's lots more. Like we have this one, which is an I Spy jar. The child could shake it around and I spy a bumblebee. We could ask them questions such as like, what does a bumblebee start with? You want to show the guess who?
Yeah, we have some guess the sound. So what we've simply taken are these little things you will find inside Kinder Surprises, and we've filled them with random objects. So the fun part is for the child to guess what the sound is, open it up, and you'll see. We have bells here. This will help them with sound recognition.
Another really fun one up here is the ladybug counting. So we literally just took popsicle sticks and wrote numbers on them. So these say 1 and 2. And then you got clothespins, and they have little flies on them. So this says 1, so you would clip 1 fly. The other one says 2, so you would put 2 flies, and then so on and so forth. So it's actually really fun for the kids, and it will get them to learn numbering. The last one we have here is an ABC jar. So kids love sensory activities. So you have a sand bin, and they can dig around inside of it. And if Dragon calls out, or Dragon, I'm calling out and looking for something that starts with the letter C, she would look through the bin.
Let's see what we can find. Chicken.
And found a chicken. So that works perfectly.
Now, if you want to play dress up too, you can also make your own homemade items. For example, if you can't purchase jewelry, that's fine. You can make it with homemade items you find at home, and dress up becomes easy.
Welcome back to Insight, Homeless to Home. And we are now in the research segment, or the field experience segment, and we have 2 guests. We have Gregory Stevenson, who's with us today, and Dr. Naheed Dosani, who's with us today. And both of them have a lot of experience working with homeless people. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Dosani. Tell me a little bit about how you see Housing First as an initiative that, in your eyes, could work, couldn't work. Where should it go?
Absolutely.
Can you share that with us?
So, a lot of the interventions supporting the homeless tend to focus on Band-Aid solutions that may be accepting the state of homelessness. Housing First flips current notions on its head. Currently, if someone wants to obtain housing, they need to jump through a set of hoops to obtain that housing. Yeah. Housing First says, no, housing is a human right, and it empowers people. So it flips that process in reverse and says, we'll give you a roof over your head and give you those services right there. So by recognizing that housing is a human right and empowering people to make decisions about the services they need and want, it works. Mm-hmm. And we had the largest study on homelessness and Housing First in Canada that wrapped up in April 2014, the At-Home Chez Soi Demonstration Project, a $110 million study, which showed great findings of Housing First here in Canada.
Mm-hmm. And we've seen it actually work, because it's working in Medicine Hat, right?
Absolutely.
Like we said, they took 900 homeless people off the street, took them and gave them shelter, and that gave them the dignity that Peter was talking about before, and built that capacity for them as long as they were serviced, right? And they all came from different places, right? So we don't have a magic formula to say that, all homeless people need this, this, and this, but it's taking each individual and being able to provide them with the services, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things to note is that the individuals who have been studied on Housing First tend to have severe mental health issues. Yeah. So they tend to interact with police quite a bit, institutions. They tend to go to the emergency departments. Not only is that not the best place for these folks to be, but it's costly to the system. Mm-hmm. The At-Home Chez Soi Demonstration Project showed that for severe mentally ill patients, for every $1 we put in housing, we get $2.17 back as a society. So if the moral and ethical imperatives don't work, there are financial arguments that work for folks as well.
Mm-hmm. And like I was saying earlier, it costs 5 times as much to keep a homeless person on the street.
Yeah.
To maintain homelessness.
Because Right.
That
yeah.
seems very
like,
ironic.
Isn't
It
that
costs
sad?
money
to think
to
that's what
maintain
it costs?
homelessness.
It's very sad. And while shelters and food banks seem like really great initiatives, there goes my mic. Very great initiatives to support, and I support the folks who support them. Systemic change is needed, right?
Absolutely.
And systemic change says homelessness should not exist, and food security should be something that all Canadians are privileged to. This takes societal change, healthcare people, social service people, policymakers, politicians to be on board for this. We all need to be working on this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Gregory, you're putting together a model for Peel,
Yes.
and I know that a lot of your work has been in Brampton.
Yes.
So share with us what that project looks like.
Basically, our project is taking the housing first a step further. We are taking into consideration the factors that brought people to homelessness. The solution isn't always finding someone a home. I mean, yes, it is the initial problem, but how do they keep it? Most of the people we deal with, again, we've got mental issues. We have addictions, which are co-occurring almost always. You can't have one without the other. So our program is to design an aftercare and transitional housing after residential rehab. So we're going to take people in that have off the street, they go to rehab, but where do they go after that? Right back to a shelter, and then the shelter is, God bless them, their job is to get someone into a house. Boom. And they do that very effectively. But then what? They end up usually in a low rent housing project of some kind, if you want to call them crack houses, drug den, whatever. There's tons of them, and those are the ones that will usually accept somebody who's on OW or on ODSP.
Yeah.
They get no support with counseling. They get no support with choosing the housing. They're basically designed to take the first one that's available and gets them off their hands. Band-Aid solutions. And then if they have an issue, they go to the hospital. If they have another issue, they go to a walk-in clinic. If they have another, no one is overseeing this whole project, and these people revolve over and over and over again. They go to rehab, they get out, they go to a shelter. They relapse. They end up on the street.
Yeah.
They end up in jail. They come out of jail, they're right back into the shelter again.
Yeah.
What we want to do is give these people a proving ground where they can take all the tools that they've learned in rehab. We don't want to be a rehab center. Rehab works. If there's aftercare program, when you pay for rehab, if it's not OHIP sponsored, if you pay for rehab, the percentages are 85% success rates because there's a 1 year or 2 year aftercare program, counseling, support, workshops, so on and so forth. If you go in on an OHIP basis, when you leave rehab, you're on your own. The only aftercare that I'm aware of, I could be wrong, but the only one I'm aware of is with Park in Mississauga, and that's once every 2 weeks for a couple hours. That's aftercare.
What about the tools for people who aren't necessarily addicted or have mental health issues? There's those people who are just like you're saying, single parents who just can't keep a roof over their head. What about them? OW and ODSP trap them almost. You know, if you begin to make a certain amount of money over that, they'll take away your money, and then that is something they have to
You're no
rely
longer
on.
eligible for
And
support
that's
or
another,
assistance of any sort.
Focus of Full Circle is it's not just addictions. We're going to set up a website and information phone line that is Peel targeted. It's not 211 because 211 doesn't have
The
God bless them
ongoing
again.
support.
They're doing what they can.
Yeah.
But we want to create a database and search engines so that when you type in addictions counseling or daycare or whatever the title is, it's going to return relevant local services. So we are going to create a network with all the services that already exist out there. There's thousands of them, but people don't know how to get to them.
That's just it, because the programs do exist. There are numbers of them that go underutilized.
Absolutely.
It's just how do we know that they exist, and where do we get access to them? And I often find that with the programs, as much as they try to reach out to those in need, when you're homeless, you don't have a TV or internet or a phone to get updates. You don't have apps. How are you finding out about services if nobody is giving you the time of day, and you can't walk into a center because you can't Google an address?
That's right.
You don't know where these things are. So it's almost as if the marketing towards that community is designed in such a way for them not to reach the services that they need. Because from my knowledge, if you're homeless, I don't know where you're plugging in to get on the computer to find out where these services are.
Well, in my experience, the system is so fragmented now that only certain services deal with certain services that deal with certain
Yes.
services. There's no web of network, especially in Peel. It is so fragmented that you go to one place, they only deal with 2 other places for the services you're looking for, and there's
And
dozens
they don't
of them
even
out
have
there.
the knowledge of what to do to get into the other.
Exactly. And
How you can benefit from the other service.
and they usually have to contact at least 3 different places before they actually get any knowledge about what they want. And I can promise you, with drug addicts or people with mental illness, the 3rd call is never going to happen.
Yeah,
It's going to be 1 call, 2 call.
that's it.
I'm
That's it.
surprised if it would even get to 2. I
Well,
think it
yeah,
just
I
gets to
was being
that place
generous.
where, you know, and that's the challenge. So what have been your observations in terms of what's the resistance? Why isn't this happening?
I think because the solutions that underpin the change that is needed are truly systemic. And when you really track where funding comes from around interventions for the homeless, there may be dollars that are put into a health project, like some of the ones I'm involved in, but they're from the Ministry of Health. And they are earmarked with healthcare outcomes.
Yes.
And then when it's a social project, the funds come from a social, service agency, or a social aspect of provincial or local municipal government. And really, we're not seeing intersectoral work happening across the board. There are some neat examples. I just left a really great meeting with Public Health, Central West Lynn Ministry of Health, the city, and the Region of Peel, talking about homelessness and health right here, and how we can start to track data better. That's great, because what's funny about that meeting, everyone was collecting data they didn't even know they were collecting, and now we're talking about it. Just a really small nitty-gritty example, but can show the power of intersectoral work.
And that's the duplication of resources, right? The duplication of monies. Why are we doing that? And it's because we're not communicating.
Absolutely.
Right? And so how do we have that accountability, and how do we pull those resources? And I think a lot of it is to get all those people in positions of power and responsibility actually at the table to listen to those voices. Because what I'm seeing consistently is that the people that need the help aren't the people that are sitting down and a part of that conversation.
Yeah.
So it's people in positions of responsibility that still do not have the lived experience or knowledge that are making the decisions for them.
Yeah.
Right?
They say that it's been said that the best way to judge a society is by how it treats its most vulnerable. And while addressing homelessness may be one of the more complex issues our society faces, if we're able to actually address it, I think it'll showcase what we're actually capable of, and showcase what humanity really means. Another thing I wanted to touch on was the patient experience. I think any folks who meet around this issue, any policies that are passed, should involve the patient experience, the lived experience of folks who have lived out on the streets, in the shelters, who are vulnerably housed, because they can help derive the processes, and it's true justice to have their voice involved in the process.
And another thing that, touching on that, is another thing that I found is a lot of the issues with the people who are on the street, living on the street, they don't have a illness. A lot of people have had childhood trauma. They've just had pure neglect. They've never seen a functional family model before, and have grown up dysfunctional. Now, that's not something that can be medicated, so it can't be labeled under mental health. It's not a social issue because it's personal damage. So right now, treating those sort of things is not covered by anything. It's just basically deal with it on your own, because it's not an illness.
But that said, the health status of the homeless and vulnerably housed is one of the poorest. And when you look at across Canada, can anyone guess what the life expectancy of a homeless person in a city like Toronto would be?
I don't even want to know.
I'd love to know, though.
Literature shows that it's 34 to 47 years old. A recent report out of BC shows that homelessness cuts a person's lifespan by 50%.
Wow.
So with some of the care providers I work with at the Inner City Health Associates in Toronto, we consider homelessness a terminal diagnosis that's potentially worse than cancer or end-stage lung disease or heart disease. When you go in with that mindset, you start to realize that the odds are stacked against folks right from the beginning, from a social status, from a health status, and we need to do better, and the change is systemic.
So we have to start advocating for that and really be strong
And we
with
need,
that.
yes, we need to recognize that there's more than one type of homelessness.
Right.
There's people, the house burned down, they didn't have insurance. Okay, they're homeless.
Yeah.
You can find them a home, and they're going to carry
That's
on
right.
with their life.
But Gregory, you've already partnered with a lot of organizations and partners at the moment that have shown interest. Do you want to name those partners today?
Oh,
is that something that
I can tell you all the people we've met with that are more than happy to collaborate with us. CAMH.
Yeah.
We've dealt with John Howard Society, Elizabeth Fry, Salvation Army, United Way. We're getting responses. Actually, I put out about 40 emails to psychologists because while I realize that their services aren't covered by OHIP, I'm hoping that a few of them would be more than happy to help us with the programming that can be run by non-psychologists, but at least the proper groups and workshops and so on and so forth. We're dealing with Trias College. They're going to give us addictions counselors, and we're going to take their interns for the training at our center. We're dealing with, I can't even remember them all.
And that's okay. And I think the message here is that people are beginning to buy in. They are seeing the point of this and the purpose of this and the humanity that goes behind it. And I think all of us can be advocates for it. And I think all of us need to be out there making sure that our politicians are hearing this message and the importance and significance for our youth as well. I think sometimes we think that homeless people are only the older population, but now we're actually seeing a lot more youth that are homeless. Do you have any understanding of what sort of numbers we're looking at in terms of youth as opposed to, no?
So it's on the rise, and there was just a recent report put out by Homeless Hub today on this very topic, and it's quite astonishing. It's difficult to do counts on youth homelessness due to their transient and migration, the nature that they migrate, but it's definitely an issue. For every one person in a shelter, there are 23 vulnerably housed people we don't see. But when you look at health, they're just as sick as those people on the street. This includes youth homelessness, hidden homelessness, couch surfers, and that's staggering. So we need to think about how we envision and the image we have of these folks and realize they're among us and we may not even see them all the time.
Right.
Now, I just want to take the spotlight off of those that may be suffering mental illness or trauma or issues. I saw a documentary called San Francisco 2.0. Have any of you guys seen that? It's talking about the epidemic of the rise of homelessness in San Francisco, now being the most expensive city in the U.S. as a result of the dot-coms, all the Silicon Valleys coming in, hiring 21-year-olds outside of school, displacing anybody who's over the age of 30, and no longer being able to work or find a job or a house. And the problem is so much on the rise that the law has been in favor of those tech firms that have come in to take over the city, that there is nothing anybody can do about it. It's called the Ellis Clause, where you can be evicted for no fault. Just because an IT firm moved in and they want to hire young people, you can be evicted from where you live as a result of that, all to boost the economy. Now, these are trained professionals with skills, with degrees, with diplomas, with masters, with PhDs that are finding themselves at soup kitchens and nowhere to go. What programs do we have for those individuals? Is Housing First something that can work for those skilled professionals?
So Housing First, a lot of the evidence has been in support of folks with mental health issues and addictions issues. When you think about sort of what you're alluding to is the widening disparity gap we're seeing in society, and there have been some really great conversations by social service providers and healthcare providers and policymakers, something called guaranteed annual income. And it's the concept that everyone who meets a certain criteria gets a certain set of money, a living wage or a living pension, whatever it might be. And this has shown great promise. Actually, it's Canadian research from the 1970s. It's really interesting, and they've kind of dug it out. And in the Ontario budget that just passed, the provincial budget, there was a pilot for guaranteed annual income, actually. Which, so I think that's an interesting intervention.
And that's the raising of political awareness, right? That, you know, the soup kitchens or the food centers. Why am I struggling with this word?
Food banks.
The food banks. You know, why is it that we even have them? Because realistically, if everybody had a living wage, we wouldn't need them, right? But that's a political sort of awareness that we really need to put out there. And I think a part of what we're trying to do here is raise that consciousness and get it out there. So all of us need to be real advocates for the work that you're doing, the work that you are continuing to do, but also to get the message out and bring the partners in, right? So your last key message, please, just 30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay. We're hoping to get as many supporters as we can. We want to connect with as many resources and service providers that we can add to our database.
So on Facebook page, we'll put you on Facebook page and ask people to go to
Absolutely.
our Facebook page and share your interest, and let's see what we can do. Go ahead, Naheed.
A system that dignifies the humanistic approach to all people homeless and vulnerably housed would be accessible and set a threshold that meets the person where they're at, would be flexible and have a human touch. And I think we need to emphasize equity, which ensures that everyone gets what they need to be happy and healthy, and recognize that that might be different than equality, where everyone gets the same thing to be happy and healthy. And those are very different concepts.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're looking for equity. We're looking for reaching out. We're looking for organizations to connect with us to be able to provide this opportunity. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
We really
Thank you.
appreciate you being here. So we're going to our artists right now, and we're going to be back with you in just a few moments to sum up with the Voice to Action segment. Thank you again for joining us. Stay tuned.
On moving, yet I'm still here. Despite my efforts, I'm never in the clear. We're searching for purpose, for words where we face, but we won't move unless we leave this place. 'Cause we're going downtown to the misty mountains of downtown. Where we're going, we'll never stop. Over the hills and far away downtown. Packing our bags, getting ready to go. Just try and catch us, we won't be moving slow. And the train is going, moving out of this town, headed to the place where we'd like to hang around. We're going downtown to the misty mountains of downtown. Where we're going, we'll never stop. Downtown, over the hills and far away downtown. never stop. Downtown, for the hills and far away. Down, 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 going down.
Welcome back to our last segment on Voice to Action. And today we have two amazing people. Thank you for joining us today. So could you, Dave, Dave is a mortgage broker with Dave Butler and the owner, and Gorinda Sandhu is the VP of Remax. And both of you have phenomenal skills that you're going to share with us today, because now we're looking at this model of homeless people that have been through a full circle, that are now, you know, going through recovery, been through recovery, and ready to find a space of their own. So can you start off, Dave, by sharing with us what that would look like in terms of them preparing to purchase their home and how they prepare?
Well, it's actually not that hard of a process, believe it or not. I think one of the first things that we can offer through a mortgage brokerage is simply helping get your credit started first. Sometimes certainly there's going to be some impairments from the past that maybe have to be dealt with. Maybe there's no credit at all and we have to get that started up. That would be the first thing I would say. Credit is most definitely the #1 factor as far as getting a mortgage. If they've gone through the programs that Peter and Greg and Dr. Dasani have gone over, and they're now working at a job, the sky's the limit. I mean, once you have working employment, you can get a mortgage. Then we just maybe have to put in the other factors, like having you save for a down payment, helping you get your credit intact. But these are all things that are offered that are free services. I mean, credit counseling is offered by, for free by most mortgage companies that are out there. We want to help our clients get to that point where they can buy a home. So that would be certainly a great start, is working on getting your credit, working on obviously keeping your employment and maybe saving some money. But even then, with people that aren't able to save that much money, there are rent-to-own programs that are out there that many investors are out there, where they will purchase a home with the intention of renting it out for the function of the person who's renting it out to own it after 2 or 3 years. And this is certainly a plan that can be put into effect. I don't see why it wouldn't be able to reach the people that we're working with. And then obviously they end up working with Gorinda to purchase homes. So I mean, it's certainly not out of reach, and it's all you need is a bit of hope.
And I think, and we were talking about that, and I think hope is the most important thing for them. But if you're looking at the full recovery and you're looking at that cycle, you know, where they need all of the support and they get the support, when they want to step out, the most horrendous experience, I would imagine, is for them to be on their own. But what you're suggesting is that it could be a group. It could be more than one person, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 people together, actually beginning to build that capacity.
More is better. I mean, certainly if you have someone that you're also going through these programs with, and you've built an affiliation with them, and you want to do it on your own, or sorry, even with another person, there's nothing stopping that. I mean, a mortgage application is simply a group of credit, a group of income, and a group of down payment, and putting that together to be able to get them approved. So, I mean, if it's more people, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, whatever it is, that's certainly not going to be anything that's going to stop us.
So, and you were suggesting that a lot of mortgage brokers would be willing to come into and become a part of the program. Actually, if we're looking at a full recovery, a part of that recovery is being independent enough to actually go out and live by yourself and be successful. So one of the things that you might be able to offer is to be able to go into this full recovery circle and actually begin to build those skills.
Absolutely.
Amongst those
a good mortgage broker is a good planner. They're going to help you plan your finances. I think a bad mortgage broker would be someone who's just trying to figure out how much the maximum you can buy is so that they can get paid the most amount of money. I think any good mortgage broker is sitting down, they're planning out finances, and these are things that maybe you didn't get from your parents. I mean, I run into clients all the time that they were not taught how to do things in their credit. They were not taught little intricacies that will help them for mortgages. That's what we're there for. I mean, that's literally what our job is to take the mortgage transaction away from you dealing directly with a bank, which can be intimidating, and working with someone who's acting as your agent on your behalf to help you through this process.
Or even know what the credit rating does. Like, you know, if you're 700, you may be successful. If you're 600 or 500, then the chances are you're probably not. But in order to build that capacity and to build that credit rating, what does it look like? So
well, it certainly takes knowledge, and that's something you would get from your mortgage broker. I mean, one of the things that we would look at first is looking at the current credit rating, showing them what that is. What does that mean?
So
and
if
then
it's
how do we
zero,
get you to the next
because
point?
they've never had a home.
If they've never had any credit at all, nothing in the past, say, 6 years that's showing up in the credit, we're just starting from zero. We're simply helping them get access to these certain type of credit cards that they would need to start building up their credit, and showing them, hey, when you start here, you're at zero, you're probably going to have what they call an R, credit score. That's a reject credit score. It doesn't mean anything bad. It just means you don't have anything to score you on.
Yeah.
But once we get you started, we can show you all the different levels that you can obtain and get at. Certainly, I don't see any reason why someone after 1 or 2 years of building brand new credit wouldn't be in a position to get a mortgage. Truthfully, you need to have a 600 minimum beacon score on Equifax to be able to apply for a mortgage and get a good interest rate. Certainly higher is better. And these are the things that we can teach you as to how do you get to the 700s? How do you get to the 800s? How do you get to those points, right? So that's certainly something that you would get by working with a banker or a mortgage broker or anyone. But I think at the end of the day, it just comes down to having that knowledge and knowing what you need to get to. And that's something we can give you. We can give you an end point, that's for sure.
So realistically, within 2 years?
Realistically,
Could be
absolutely.
possible.
I could say without a doubt, I could take someone who's an ex-bankrupt and get them a mortgage in 2 years. So there's nothing stopping someone who's got zero credit and getting them going. You're probably talking 12 to 24 months.
So now if we're looking at 2 years and what you have mentioned with the rent to own in about 2 years getting into ownership, can you explain how that process would work for those that need it?
Yeah, well, rent to own is basically where you, let's say you don't have the deposit or the down payment saved, and ultimately an investor will buy the home and allow you to actually move in based on a rent basis. You're probably paying an extra premium per month, but that's actually going towards credits that you accumulate over the next 2 or 3 years' time to be able to now have to be able to buy that home. So it's essentially kind of like a forced savings, but they're in the home that they actually want. The investors actually bought them the home that they want to be in.
And what about the initial capital? So you said there might be a bit of an increase.
Some investors will actually take up to 0% up front. They'll build it into the credits throughout the monthly payments, right? So don't get me wrong, there might be a higher than normal rent, but they're actually just building in credits so that the person who's going to be buying the home down the road actually has a down payment.
So Grinda, so now they have the capacity to buy a home. So now your words of wisdom, please. In terms of buying a home, where do they start? How do they start looking for a home?
It's really, when we're talking about mortgage brokers and we're talking about real estate, it's a matter of reaching out to the professionals, right? These are people that, do this for a living, right? They're specialists at it. They know that, they'll interview you and find out what your needs are. So in this situation where we're dealing with people who are in that recovery mode, you really need to speak to somebody that would help you with affordable areas, right? I mean, if we listen to the headlines over the last few years, Toronto, core Toronto prices have been going up double digits for the last 10 plus years. And so affordability is a little challenged in the core of the city. But the further out you go into the suburbs, maybe even further out, it becomes more and more affordable. So really it's about sitting down with someone, just like a mortgage professional, sitting down with a real estate professional who does this for a living, that will understand what your needs are. You have to balance commute times with the savings on the price of the property. So it's really the first step is to contact a professional that you trust.
Now, how do we know? Like, I've never bought a house, and here I am now looking to purchase a home. Where do I start? And how do I know if I can trust them? And how do I know that they really know what they're talking about?
I think what you see you start to talk to people around you. We're a community-based society at the end of the day, and the Canadian dream is about owning a home. Interestingly enough, on your show earlier, we were talking about what is the cause of homelessness, right? And a number of people were talking about the breakdown in the household, right? So interestingly enough, I mean, there's in each one of our communities, there are people that have built a name for themselves that are in real estate, and that's how most people find their realtors. They ask their friends or their family members, other people that have dealt with sales professionals, and they've had a positive experience, right? So people that are true professionals have had their professionalism is known throughout the communities that they serve. And this is really a service-oriented business, and it's not going to be difficult to find somebody that you can trust because they're just a phone call away or talking to either your friends or your family who have maybe not even used this person but have heard that this person is trustworthy. So it's really doing your research, and research is really talking to the people that you know.
And if you're coming from full recovery, you may not have that network to go to people that have homes that may be, well connected. So it's almost like we need to have a list of people that needs, that they need to be introduced to, that we feel are going to be the best, giving them the best service possible.
That are knowledgeable of the situation that they were
not
in, and also compassionate towards it.
Absolutely. And then going a step forward, you know, there are real estaters that would be using, you know, charging maybe 3% or 4%. Or more, you know, depending on how good they are or where they are or what homes they deal with. So how do we find someone that is going to be compassionate enough to make sure that they give the best deal to these individuals, knowing where they're coming from? I mean, do we have, you know, any groups or organizations, just like you have pro bono lawyers?
I was just going to say, just like a legal aid, but for real estate.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing here is because of the situation that we're talking about, the person isn't selling a house, right?
No.
So the commission is typically taken on the listing side, right? Someone selling, that's the person that pays the commission. So when you're on the buyer side, which is what we're referring to here, the commission doesn't come into the picture really. And you know, when we look at commission, it's the better the service, typically, you know, you want to commensurate with the level of service. But in this particular situation, you know, you have an option to interview multiple people, right? And this is how you do your research.
It's building that network.
Yeah, and when we're in a recovery mode, you know, at that point, I have to think that you have access to the internet. And really, that's how most people do their research. Over 90% of their people that search for real estate do it online first. And the realtors that specialize in various areas, in this area it would be more affordable housing, those are the kinds of things that you would search for. And during your search online, you'll come up with a number of names because people who specialize in this area really make it a point to let it be known online that this is what they specialize in. And so then you'll have an opportunity to interview multiple people, and it doesn't cost anything. Which is the beauty of it for people that are buying their property. So you know, it's not pro bono because the realtor, the professional realtor, is getting a commission, but they're not typically charging the buyer for it.
Yes.
Your last message, please.
I think that it was said earlier today that housing is a right, and I completely agree with you. And it's actually more than a right. It's the Canadian dream. It's the area that we in our communities have built communities, and interestingly enough, a family unit with a roof over it is really the unit that's going to break this homeless cycle. And so and there are affordable areas that and it's building up. I mean, minimum down payment requirement is the 5% that I think we alluded to earlier. So when you hear about those rules of the 10% required, it's only above 500,000. So when we're looking at affordable housing, 5%, and if we're looking at people in recovery mode, whether they can get together and get that 5%, and with Dave's help here, get back on the road to developing credit, then there are affordable options. And if people commute to downtown Toronto, which is where they work, then there are ways of getting into housing and break that cycle, really. And so it's really a matter of contacting somebody that's a professional in this area to help them out.
Absolutely. So we're going to need your resources, so just stay tuned with us. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here. Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us today, and more courageous conversations will continue. Take care.
Thanks, Ranjit. As we can see, the stigma surrounding homelessness doesn't always have to follow the stereotype of someone being addicted to drugs or refuses to get a job to earn a living. Sometimes people are stuck in that cycle where it could be a single parent trying to look after their family, and they don't have time to look at their current financial situation, or they don't know what to do with regards to exploring the opportunities of buying a home. If you know some individuals in these categories, never hesitate to reach out, set them up with a mortgage broker or real estate agent who can sit down and help explain the process to them, or even encourage them to explore the rent-to-own model. Don't forget to check us out on our Facebook page, Towards Social Justice, and keep following us on Twitter for our updates, @TowardsSJ. On behalf of the Insight hosts, I'm David Barnwell, and keep having those courageous conversations.